Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Kim Barrett Show. I am your host, Kim Barrett. On today's episode, something a little different. I was actually interviewed for his podcast by a close friend of mine, Mr. Matt Smith. He's been on my podcast, and we thought that it was such a fun episode we wanted to share it with you as well. So if you're someone that wants to grow your business, of course, feel free to check out our free Facebook community, www.joinmygroup.com.au. And of course, if you want to see how to grow your business, listen to this episode. But until then, let's jump into the show.
Thank you so much for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
It is an honor, my good man. Just for all of us fellow skull takers, who the hell is Kim Barrett?
Kim is my name. Leeds is my game. So I've been doing stuff online for like the last 16, 17 years, and really wanting to hone in on when Facebook ads first came out. That was like my jam. I wanted to hone in on that and figure out how I could use that to grow businesses. And for me, it's always been about how can I find different ways to help businesses? Because when I was younger, like I would go past and you'd see like shops and they're closing. And like when you're a little kid, you don't really understand why. And you're like, what? Like that was a cool shop. The lady there was nice. Like, why are they closed? Or, why is that doesn't exist anymore? And then I remember my dad telling me, he's like, look, they just didn't have any customers. When we go in and spend money, that's how they make money. They don't have enough people going in. And and I was like, oh, why don't they just get more people? Like as a kid, you'd ask just straight questions. You're like, why don't they? And it's like, well, they don't know how to get people in. They don't, you don't hear them on the radio or on TV or see them in the newspaper. And that to me was kind of like a moment where I was like, oh, well, if I want to help businesses, because I always wanted to be in business or businessman of some sort with my kind of thing when I was a little kid. I was like, I want to do that. And I was like, all right, well, that's got to be something that I have to figure out. Like I have to figure out how to make sure that's the case. And then like forever through any like little endeavors that I did from that point, it was always about how do I make sure that I'm not like those people where, you couldn't, you couldn't survive anymore. You had to close the doors. Because the difference if you close the doors because you decide to versus like not having any customers. So I never wanted that to be a problem. And ever since then, kept working, iterating, learned direct response, advertising as deeply as I could, learn from all the old school guys as much as I could. And that was my big focus was like, just how do I make sure that never is the case for me? Like I'm happy if I have to close because it's on my terms versus being like, can't get customers.
Yeah. That's interesting you share that. We have that in common. You'd look around, you see a store, you can sadly, you hope you're wrong, but you can tell this ain't going to work. It's, if only they had the tools and the resources and the knowledge to put it all together. So it sounds like you've always come from a really good place, wanting to help people, wanting them to, so that they can do their thing best. Sort of love to go back a minute there and just sort of figure out where you got started, and how you've ended up doing what you're doing now.
Yeah, well, I mean, my first, like I always had little like side hustles and things that I would try and do when I was a little kid. So when I was in year 7 in Australia, that's like 11 years old, say. So I was 11 years old and Pokemon had just come out, and I downloaded like an emulator and I put it onto little floppy disks, and I was selling them for like $2 each at school. I didn't realize that was like copyright infringement, all these sorts of things. I was like 11 years old. I was like, oh, people want Pokemon, I'll sell them Pokemon. Like why not? Very quickly found out that was not a good thing to do. But that was like, I'd always like, if there was a demand for something, I'd try and figure out how I could make it work. And then fast forward to when I was about 15 years old, one of my other hobbies was fish keeping. So I claim, I was the number 1 fish breeder in all of Western Australia. With me and my dad, we had a spare shed out the back, and we had about 50 fish tanks. So the tropical fish industry is like multi-billion-dollar industry in Australia, around the world, hundreds of billions of dollars. There's like some fish you can get that go for dollars, hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars, depending on the type, rarity, etc. So back then there was forums, right? There wasn't really Facebook groups and things like that. It was all forum based. So I was a moderator. I answered enough questions to then be upgraded to a super moderator, and then they asked me to join the admin team because I was spending, so much time on there researching myself, helping other people, and just kind of supporting. And they said, Kim, if you come on, like we need to get more revenue on here to keep the servers going. Because back then, if you hosted a forum that had tons of hits, and it was getting like 50 to 70,000 from memory hits a month, which was pretty big at the time. But that was expensive to host the space for that, to pay the all the different things you needed to pay to have a website running was expensive. And they're like, we need about $40,000 in revenue. Whether it be donations so that we can auction it off or whatever, but we need to, like, for the year, $40,000 of commitments is what we need. And I was like, all right, cool. Let's see what we can do. So I was like, why would people give us money? And they're like, well, we've got all these visitors. Here's like a screenshot. Back then it was like, put it into Microsoft Paint to do some drawings on it and circle some things. And it was like, cool, we've got all these visitors coming. We've got literally the bar across the top, right, which was where we could put banners. We could put website banners and things like that. It's like, great, let's go and try. So all I did was I was like, cool, Googled all of the fish places in Australia, went on to other forums, looked at who their sponsors were. Because I was like, if you sponsor one, surely you're likely to sponsor 2 or 3, like to get a bit of awareness. And I just put together an email and I was like, hey, I'm an admin of this forum. Here's the link. We have 10 spaces available. 2 currently have gone. We have, at the time of writing this, we have 8 spaces available. Here's our traffic. This is what we do. This is what we're looking for. And P.S., I was like, I'm sending this to 40 of the top fish stores in Australia. If you're in, you can either send us a link back of what you would like to commit, or here's a PayPal link if you want to grab a spot. Not knowing that at the time I was like using scarcity and urgency and all this sort of stuff, because it was like, that was just legitimately what it was, right? It was just like, this is the actual scenario. Couldn't make more banner space, couldn't do anything else. I was like, okay, well, let me try it. So I fired that up, sent it off, and the next morning we woke up, we had over $40,000 of commitments of either cash or people that had responded and everything like that. And I was like, that's when I was like, oh wow, like if you can control stuff online, you can make some money. There's the ability to do it. I didn't get any of that money, by the way. That all went to the forum. So I think they sent me 2 fish as a thank you. So that was great. That was my commission. Worth it. But that it just opened my eyes up to like, okay, cool, people want attention on the internet. And then I started going more and more down marketing and learning that side of things. And then when Facebook ads, I was like pretty heavy at affiliate marketing and testing that out. Then when Facebook ads came out, I was like, all right, I'm going to play with this. And I remember I just kept playing with it and using it. And then people would be like, oh, how did you do that? Like even my sister and I had bought a house and sold it. And I was chatting to the real estate agents that were selling our house. And they were like, oh, so what do you like do? And I was like, oh, I do a little bit of this marketing stuff. Like, for example, if you had a Facebook page and you're doing this, like, would you want inquiries? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, well, that's what I do, is I help people get the inquiries come through. And so I signed, like, just after they finished selling our house, I signed them up as one of my first clients.
There you go.
Which was pretty cool. So I was happy to bring them on board. And that kind of sparked me forward from there. And I was like, cool, just kept playing with ads, iterating, playing with online business, launching and learning different things. Like even when, funnels came out for the first time, I remember like watching the webinar when like Russell Brunson launched ClickFunnels and things like that, where it's it all kind of came to the forefront and just trying to stay on top of things. And then I was like, well, I've just got to pick the main lane that I want to be in, which is like paid ads, and like the method, which is direct response, and just only focus there, keep learning. And that was, now 10 years ago that point in time happened. So it's just been like my everyday life since then. So it's just been learning, iterating, and trying to teach as well. So I always find that if I can teach it, it helps me understand it even more. But I don't really like to teach stuff that I haven't done. So I always make sure I do it first, test it, make sure that it works, break it, and then teach it. Because when I teach it, then I get asked questions that will make me think about it even more deeply, so that I can make sure that I fully understand it as well.
Gotcha. So you're when like Facebook ads first came out, you were there.
You're
in the game.
I was on the beaches. Yeah. The forefront of ads.
Man, it's changed a bit since then, I'm guessing.
It used to just be like click this button, put a orange border around a picture of a pretty girl, and send traffic. That would work.
Beautiful.
Right hand ads only. It was good. Like I remember when newsfeed ads came out, I was like, man, this is a game changer. Like this is going to make things so much more easy. So yeah, it was crazy times.
There you go. So when did you figure out like you wanted to build a Facebook ads business or like an agency and stuff like that? Like when did that kick in?
Pretty like I didn't know that I wanted to, like I didn't really know that an agency, it didn't exist. Like being, especially a Facebook ads agency, like at the time there was probably a handful of agencies at that, like doing that in the country, maybe like 2 or 3, but most of them were extensions of like news and TV agencies that were doing big stuff, and they just started playing with it. And then there was like one of my very early mentors, Ben Simkin, had started doing it, and he was like the only person really in Australia that was doing it like for people that I knew of at the time. So I was like, I'd already started doing it for people, but I was just like doing it for people that I met randomly, and they're like, "Oh, can you do this?" Or my brother-in-law, I went and worked for him for a while, and he's like, "I'll be your client if you want." And I was like, "Oh, okay." Like people are paying. Like this is the thing.
This is the thing.
Yeah. So then I was like, okay, I'll try and get more, and then I would run ads, try and get more clients and stuff, and started learning from Ben, my mentor, around like what an agency is, how is it structured. You need people to do this because, like, at the time when I was doing it for random people, I was just chucking literally pictures that they would send me. I put it into Canva, put some not Canva, Paint at the time, put some text on it, download it again, put it in. I'd write the copy. It would go to a landing page, which I had to when ClickFunnels came out, amazing, it's much easier for me. But before that was like WordPress sites that we were just building and just kind of like using different themes and pushing them in there and writing stuff in and trying to build out opt-in forms and stuff. And it was painful. So then I started to learn about what an agency is, how they operate. And then I was like, okay, cool. Well, I'd love to have teams supporting me. So the first thing I did, because the absolute thing I was the most terrible at was graphics. That was the first thing that I brought up. I was like, I know, like I suck. This is terrible. But it was working. But I was like, look, to make it a bit more professional, I need to get that. And then that was my first ever person that I hired, was a part-time person to come and do some graphics for me. And then just started iterating and adding people from there, brought on someone to help me with some sales. Then started looking at other people that did ads, and then copywriters, and then funnel builders, and all the way down the line.
Yeah, right. And how was your, like, in terms of when you figured out, all right, I'm actually doing this thing, people are actually paying for this, it's pretty cool, could be a real business. What was the growth pattern there from there when you really made that decision to go all in with it?
It was scary. I took on way too many. I was just like, people were like, I want you to do this. I'm like, of course you do. Like, give me money. Let's do it. And it was a very rapid growth without the fundamentals in place. Like, building a card tower on a very rickety table at a pub and people walking past and bumping it. That was exactly what it was like at the time, because I didn't have the right structures in place internally, systems in place. Like I had some of them roughly there, but like my mentors would tell me things, but not everyone's business operates in the same way. Some people run agencies super lean without too much structure internally. Some people have it very departmentalized, and now you can see it's like becoming more and more evident in the way that people are approaching their agencies. But at the time it was like crazy, and I just took on whatever work. I would just do it. I was doing most of it. So I was like project managing and copywriting it, media buying it. Didn't do the graphics, but I did pretty much everything else. And then I took on one client who was a ASX listed company. They wanted to run huge Christmas campaigns, and they were like $8K a month. That was like my biggest ever charge to a client. And I was like, I've made it. This is it, like I'm the king of the castle now. One person's paying me $8K a month, and they're like, oh, we want to launch all these campaigns for Christmas. And Christmas is my favorite time of year. I like hanging out with my family and taking a few days off and just unwinding after a big year. And this was not going to be the case with this client. So I took them on, and I think in 1 week I launched in the vicinity of, I think it was like 20 campaigns, 40 ad sets, and 40 ads. So across all, like
Jeez.
in across all of them. So, you know, multiply that out. Like we're talking, you know, 4,000 ads myself.
Jeez.
And I was like, this is not good. Like I can't this is not good. And then they were like, oh yeah, we're starting to get close to the ROAS, the return on ad spend that we want. Can you do more? And I'm like,
Yeah, can you increase it?
no. I was like, I can't do any more. I'm dead. I'm like dead. And then I was like, no, I've bitten off. And that's also when I realized like what my niche was. I was like, I can't work with e-commerce like this. That's why I fully went into lead generation as my big focus, because e-commerce like nearly killed me, and I like my hands were like blistering from stress. It was terrible. And then I had to fire them. They kind of like didn't let me fire them. It was weird for a little bit.
Yeah, because they're making money.
Yeah, they're like, why should we let you let us go? And I was like,
yeah,
what? I was like, no, this is not the conversation. Like, I'm like, I'm sorry, it's not you, it's me. You have to break up.
yeah,
it was hard, but that was probably like the start. And then I was like, okay, after that point, after Christmas, I managed to hand them over to a bigger, more experienced e-com agency that I was had some connections with, and I was like, cool, can I please give you guys this client? They're like, oh, we don't take clients that are like spending like they must have thought it was a small client. Like we don't take clients that are spending like, you know, 20 grand a month. And I was like, that's cool, man. They're spending 20K a day. And then they're like, oh, we'll take them. Yeah, we'll take them. Yeah. I was like, okay, cool, thank you. So that was then I was like, all right, great. Like if I was to ever get a client like that again in the lead gen space, like what do I have to have in place? Systems, communication, because I was getting like calls from clients, emails from clients, everything. Like it was so messy. So then I had to figure out, how did I want communication to look? How did I want to deliver reporting? Like all the fundamentals that needed to be there. I had to kind of rebuild at that point. So then it was like, okay, great. Then it let me build the solid foundation. So then I could start stacking things up from there, rather than just going, oh, cool, like clients want to give me money, take it, and then figure out the rest later.
Yeah. Wow. That's interesting. Yeah, because you really don't know what you don't know. You sure did figure out what you liked and what you didn't pretty quick, I suppose. There.
Yeah, exactly. I had to literally put my hand on the stove to see that it was hot, and then figure it out from there.
Yeah, gotcha. So then through that process, you figured out lead gen was your jam. Like that's what you wanted to focus on. Yeah. Was it specific niches or just lead gen in general? How'd that play out?
We've done like property development and investment, and then fitness has always been one that we had. We had like some really good friends in health and fitness. So that was always one. And then like educators. When I say educators, not like teachers, but like people that run webinars, live events, things like that. Like that was all, those three will kind of have always been our jam. Just because we like those industries, and we just had a really good process down for all of them, and we've kind of always have had. So those were the big three that we always focused on and just like refined into it. And we've occasionally taken people outside of that, as a lot of people do, but they're like predominantly the ones that we focused on, because otherwise it was, you know, we've done ones, we've had electricians come on, we've had this, we've had that, and yes, we've been able to get them results, but it's like the ones that we love to work with long term are the ones where we know that, cool, you know, if this stops, we know how to fix it. If something doesn't go right, we know how to tweak it. We've got backups on backups, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sort of going through that, and you used to talk me in and out of not taking on the wrong client or the wrong niche as well. It's not that you can't get the leads. It's just if you've got something that's proven working, you can solely focus on the one space. It's just so much simpler, hey?
Yeah, it just allows, and it's like, it's fun for us as the person who's like, you know, pushing the buttons and playing with things. We're like, oh, a new like industry, cool, let's do it, let's crack it. But then it's like when you start bringing on the team on, it's like, oh, okay, now we have to completely change our headset every, you know, hour into a different client doing this can just become painful for them.
Yeah, that makes sense. And at what point did you sort of identify like you you wanted to get into either the coaching space, the done with you space, consulting, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I'd always been kind of doing that along the way, because my brother-in-law's business had a a business mastermind kind of thing attached to it.
Got you.
I had helped him kind of like grow up and speak at and things. So he'd always be like, "Hey, you run our ads as well. You come and teach our clients what you're doing, what's working right now, all that sort of stuff." So I'd always been doing that just as like a bonus for him, just like in doing it because I like to go travel with him. He was like, a good friend of mine, and like my brother worked for him, so it was like cool, like a free family holiday once a quarter sort of thing, like, oh cool, I'll come do this, no worries. So I'd always like to try and teach as much as I could, because that's probably more so my superpower, is like educating and taking a complex thing and making it relatively simple for most people to be able to understand. I'd say is one thing that I'm pretty good at. So I like to always kind of double down on that. And so I would just teach along the way. Then I was like, all right, came a point in time I'm like, I'm now going to start doing it for myself and start trying to put out products and sell products. And some of my first sales mentors were like, cool, put together a program, sell it. Like, you're already doing ads, great. The people that don't want to do it, like, put together like an 8-week program, and see if people want to buy it from you. Run some ads and see what happens. And we just started to get some results. We started getting people paying us for like an 8-week Facebook training program, which we ran a few times. Then we started doing some more advanced things, and we did I was going over to Thailand for my cousin's wedding. I was like, I want to do an event in Thailand. And I was like, because I like martial arts as well, and I'd done like a bit of Muay Thai here, train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I was like, I'm going to call it Dojo, and we're going to run it in Thailand. We're going to go train Muay Thai in the morning, and then we're going to come back and do ads and Facebook and business stuff in the afternoon. And we did it. And I was like, we sold, I think it was like 6 people into it. It didn't make any money for my first event, but it covered most of the cost. Like, so I was like, well, that got to me to Thailand for free for my cousin's wedding. We got to hang out in a week in like a pimp house in like, there's a strip called Millionaires Row in Thailand, which is like all big, beautiful houses. Got to stay there, had a private chef for the week. Like, it was great. So for me, I was like, that just to prove to myself that, number one, I could do it. And then number two, bring together some great people that are doing cool stuff and hang out with them. I was like, I would do that anyway. You know what I mean? So like that was that was really cool. And that was the point where I was like, all right, great. Probably going to start try and put together a bit more focus on either my events or groups. And at the time, I was still managing or helping like another group through my brother-in-law's business. So then I was like, I don't really have time to do his 4 events and my 4 events, but then that kind of phased out for him. So I was like, all right, now I've got capacity to, let's go. Let's see what happens. So then I started launching our Mastermind, which is like the highest level of coaching and consulting that we do. And then it's just like, we've just had last year was 3 years. This is our 4th year of running it, which has been really cool. So it's, it keeps me super busy and occupied with staying up to date with things, because it's like everyone's like, cool, Kim better share something good if I'm coming to this mastermind and paying this money, and also making me expand my connection of speakers and guests. And obviously you come and spoke for us, which was awesome. Taught everyone how to take skulls.
That's what we did.
How to grow the best hair on Facebook. It's there was many different topics covered. So that was great, and that was like, that's what, again, like, gives me some inspiration and fun and just outside of the box thinking, which I don't necessarily get every single day to day running ads for everyone, even though our team do most of that now. But it does keep me on my toes, keep me testing things internally so I can share them externally as well.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, that's cool. It's a funny story, because I was one of your first masterminders.
Yeah, I think you were the first.
In the inaugural crew.
Yeah.
The first. There you go. Number 1. There you go. It was funny because company I used to work with, Ryan Tuckwood, he was doing some training with them. He came and spoke to us in just before the Christmas break in whenever it was, 2018, or can't remember when exactly. And I'm looking at this guy and I'm like, they're saying really good stuff, like really motivational stuff. And I've just taken it as a, like, what the fuck am I doing? I'm sitting here. I'm really good I have this skill. I'm very good at advertising. I've been helping people on the side, getting them insane results. And I'm sitting here doing a thing that doesn't inspire me anymore. And this guy's a similar age. And I'm like, all right, I got to do the thing. I then go and see an ad with you in it. And it's talking about how you started your business from zero and grew it up to a multi-seven-figure business, but did it in a really cool way, like ethically, getting great results, having a good fun along the way. I'm like, right, I've spoken to Kim plenty of times. Let's fucking do it. See what he's got. I'm going in. I identified that I wanted to be around people that had done the thing that I wanted to. And then I hit you up and then joined the very first mastermind. And I think that's a really cool thing to share because I want to get into masterminds, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But yeah, just from my perspective, I guess having someone there I know with certainty having someone there that had gone through the tough stuff, the stuff that you don't know about until you do, really helped Katie and I on our growth path because we scaled quickly. We had, you know how quickly it blew up, and you were just giving the right hints at the right time, just the right sort of guidance, telling us like, "Oi, Matt, build your team. Stop being an idiot. Like, stop taking on so many clients." But all the stuff you just don't know until it's too late. So, with that in mind, I'd love to talk about masterminds, the great things that you've seen, either from the ones you're in or the one, your one, the Mogul Mastermind, and everything in between, mate.
Yeah, look, as I've been in a ton. I've facilitated a ton. I've attended a ton, and obviously we run our own. And look, they are great. And it's like, I think that as long as people know what they're looking to get out of them, the things I dislike about masterminds at scale, I don't like big group masterminds. Don't call it a mastermind, it's an event. Like that's that's my thing to say. If you've got over 30, 40 people, it's impossible. Even we bring about 30 into ours, and that's a stretch. That's like top end of the max amount of people you can have because you can't really facilitate exchange of ideas and collective sharing of ideas in a group bigger than that. My personal opinion. So bigger ones is cool. Big events are great. I love them for inspiration and things like that, but it's hard to get the brilliance of a small group. And that's what I really like about masterminds. So for me, the benefit is about having like-minded people coming together, sharing ideas and being able to help each other. And I personally like a mix of businesses because I find that too many businesses in the same niche, you fall into the habits of each other. And if you can get similar size businesses, like revenue sizes or people sizes, coming together and sharing ideas, then I think it's great. There's collective brilliance being this is working in this industry. Why not bring it across to this industry? Or this is working over here. Why not bring it across over here? And probably the third part that I like the most is having the ability to implement and execute. I think is hugely important for people whilst either you're attending or immediately straight after. Too many events and masterminds I've been in, I've seen where you get brain dumped on all day, epic, huge ideas, and then people don't either execute or they don't have the time to follow through. So we kind of run ours a bit different because I've experienced it myself, sitting there listening all day long and then going home and my brain's dead. Then you've got networking drinks and then you're cool. Then you go home, pass out, and you go do it all again the next day. It's impossible. So we run ours early-ish, we either start between 8 and 10 somewhere, and we normally finish by 2 to 3, so that people have, if they want to, time to decompress. We also make time in our events to implement, but then also after, even if you're going to go to network, if you're going to go to dinner, you've got an hour or two after an event to cool, let my brain settle, go for a walk, get some peace to yourself. And then you can go back again and network and have drinks or go to dinner or have people over or whatever you want to do. But having those gaps, I think, is important because you can't take too much information in all at once, is my personal opinion. You can write it all down, but it's super hard to then implement. And then what happens is you go home, it's the weekend or it's on the weekend, and you come home and you start your week, you're back in the swing of things. And you've got a book, Ryan Tucker would call it, you add into your shelf help. You've got all this stuff that's starting to build up on the bookshelf behind you, but you haven't actually implemented it and actually taking
Yeah.
any action on it. So
Yeah.
for me, I think that's the big things is like, especially if you go to one, either having time in it to implement or making time immediately post it to implement for yourself, because you'll probably get some ideas that could change your business and change your life. But if you don't take that time to implement it, it's like it's going to go to the wayside. So for me, I like to find like shorter events or masterminds to go to, or again, I just make time after. It's like ideally I love ones that are during the week, so I can keep my weekends to decompress or to execute and put the plans together.
Yeah.
Rather than being like taking all the time up and like, or again, same taking a Monday off after a weekend one, so that you've got that time to be able to decompress and then execute and find out what you liked, what you didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's great advice. Like, personal experience, same sort of thing. It does take it out of you, especially if you go all in and you're super focused on it, you're not mucking around on your phone, and you really are taking in the information and putting in a big effort to make it work. Some of us will most likely be working before or after, like in the morning or at night as well, depending on your scenario. So having that time to focus and then just really picking out one thing to go all in with, that's what I found. It might not even be that you implement one thing from the mastermind, if you're like, which you saw with us. Sometimes it's not the right time, but you park it there for later when it is the right time. And we've done that plenty of times. So, yeah, I think that's really good advice, mate. You've just on the events sort of space, I think you've really identified that a mastermind should be smaller, intimate. You know, the ones at scale, they really are events. But you have thrown a couple of big events too. I'd love to sort of hear about, the events you've thrown and how they went and what you loved, what you didn't.
Yeah, I mean, look, they're much more stressful.
bet.
You have much less room for error, much less you can get away with in bigger events. So the biggest one that we've done today is, and look, in comparison to some people that put on events, is small. We had 150 people at Optus Stadium here in Perth, which was really cool, at the football stadium here.
Felt bigger than that. Felt big.
Yeah, it did feel.
It was big, but it felt. Yeah.
It was like it definitely felt a lot more like I probably thought it was like double that, but it wasn't. Yeah. Tickets. We just saw that many tickets, like that's for sure. And we had like Mark Boris was our keynote. We had like we had Ryan Tuckle, tons of great speakers come and speak as well, which was epic, and it was across two full days. And it was intense. It was great. Like from the event itself didn't make money on like ticket sales, but that wasn't our intention. Yeah. It was to find like 150 people that loved what we do, that came in, that got to experience it, that got to be like brand advocates for us going forward, where they could get some really good results from being there and take that away. And obviously we also got to bring in all of our masterminders, which was great. And it was just a cool experience to be able to facilitate. If I do it again, I don't think on the front end, like having a big keynote person, like sometimes can bring people, sometimes doesn't. Like a handful of people probably bought tickets because of Mark Boris being the keynote. When I say handful, I'm like probably 3 that I know of. They were like, I came from that.
Yeah, I had a few people mention that to me in passing.
Yeah.
But it was a handful. Yeah.
Like it's small, but a couple did, right? But the awareness that we got after, a lot of people were like, "Oh, you're the guy," like, and your social voice are the guys that brought over Mark Boris, right? I'm like, "Oh yeah, that was us." And we had ads running with him. Like he did a video saying he's coming over for certified ballers, all that sort of stuff. Which is what the intention of the event was bigger, more awareness for our business and brand, like more connection with speakers and their audiences and things like that. So from that perspective, it worked. As I say, but if our goal was just to sell tickets, I wouldn't have put on a big keynote like that. But the bigger intention behind it was, but also because we didn't want to also run a sales event. I didn't want to have people with sales forms standing at the back of the room buying stuff. And again, not because that's good, bad, or otherwise. I just couldn't be bothered dealing with that. I was like, no, I'd rather speak to people after, one-on-one, see what works for them, not try and pitch everyone and use like, you know, you see now like people bringing over Gary Vee and all that sort of stuff. And the reason they bring them over is because then on the back of that, they're going to sell you something.
Yeah.
And then tickets are $100 or something like that. Like it's going to be a sales process. Like I've got no problem with that either. But for me, I was just like, not my jam, not what I want to do.
Yeah.
Cannot be bothered with that. So we decided to do, just more manual back end follow up, but which again was epic, and we got some really good results on the back of that. Didn't help us that the week after that was COVID hit. So
yeah, that's right.
That was like a bit annoying because that kind of made it hard because we were also going to try and sell tickets to CBO number 3, and it was like, well, we don't know when we can ever do an event again. So that kind of made that hard. But yeah, it was a good experience. It was like, as long as you know, again, with big events, it's like knowing the purpose, the outcome you want to achieve with it is the biggest thing. Because again, I could have done that thinking I'm going to make sales on the front end and it would have sucked. Or I could have done it and been like trying to pitch products at it and it would have sucked, because I also had all of our clients there. And I was like, I don't want all my clients that have already bought stuff from me, I don't want to sit there and sell to them for 2 hours. Like I couldn't think of anything worse. Neither could they. So it's knowing the intention behind it as well. I think is the big one. So like knowing what you want to achieve from an event. And they were good and they're fun. And like, I love speaking at them. I'm speaking at a big event over in Melbourne in August, which would be cool. Like but like, look, to be fair, I much rather someone else take on the pressure and stress, and I just come and speak, and then I get to go home. Like that's much better for me.
Yeah, I will say your speakers had a great time. We were having a few drinks with them after, and they had a great experience. Mark Boris, his presence. It's not that he didn't share any different information than what some of the other people did. It's just him, the way he says it, his credibility. Yeah, when he speaks, he just commands your attention. Hey, he was fantastic.
He's got the swagger.
Yeah, he does. It was super cool. Even if you didn't make any cash on the front end, it was great. Love to get your thoughts on sort of what's popping in the world of ads at the moment. Like, what should we look out for? Where's the opportunity at the moment?
Yeah, look, there's some pretty cool stuff coming. Like I know there's several new platforms which will be hitting the markets in the coming months and year or so. So I think it's always good to be able to take a first mover advantage when that sort of stuff comes through. So definitely tell everyone to kind of have their ears and radars up for that. But at the moment, the biggest thing that I'm seeing is just like is making an ecosystem. Like making sure that if you're running ads on Meta, you're running ads on TikTok, you're running ads on Google, like you've got a cross-pollination going. So what we started to see is that a lot of people still try and it's like having a table with one leg. They're like, oh, I'm just going to do ads here. And it works for a bit, and then something happens, an account goes down, it gets paused or whatever. And then it's like the rest of the ecosystem doesn't have any fuel. But if you've got Meta ads, TikTok ads, LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever it might be, they all kind of work together and they all feed back into website and Google. So I found that the more that people kind of have a cross-pollination of many different platforms, the better that they do. And not just spending more money on one that's getting you cheaper leads or whatever it might be at the moment, but increasing that across the board so that you're building a bigger ecosystem to bring people in. So for me, I think that whole omnipresence approach is becoming even more and more so pertinent, but making sure that you've got at least 3 or 4 legs for your table, I think is hugely important, and it's only going to become more important as people start to get saturated in different areas where people pumping out crappy content with Chat GPT and things like that, and there's going to be a whole lot of more smack coming out. It's better to have your personality and brand being showcased authentically as you across more platforms, because it's gonna start to stand out between the chalk and the cheese.
Yeah. You mentioned something there that I'll try and get a bit of an answer out of you, try and dig a bit deeper, that there are some new platforms coming out, and whilst you're a bit nonchalant about it, you may have some more insider information. Can you share anything more?
Yeah,
or do we have to wait?
Well, look, for the full breakdown, I'm going to have to wait. But I know that there's platforms that I'm working on, with advertisers to help, such as Mr. Matt Smith, to help make sure that the advertisers as businesses are supported, as well as businesses on the platforms are supported. And we've got some that have got some probably more unique approaches to how they're approaching social media versus being just social media. And I think the rise of that has come off the back of TikTok, where they're not saying they're a social media app. They're saying that they are a entertainment and education app. So I think when you start to see some of these niches down in the world of social media, even though they want to get away from that banner, like the one that we're referencing, like there's going to be one which is going to be based around more positivity, happiness, and support as a platform, rather than just social media where people can go and spout off words and talk crap about each other and all that sort of stuff. There's definitely at least one coming that's going to have that as a focus, but it's also going to focus on all the end users, rather than being like people that use Facebook as no. It's like, cool, try and get in touch with someone and get some support. Terrible, right? Business owner and your page disappears. Terrible. Individual user and your profile gets locked or blocked, or someone tries to hack it, get support. Terrible. So I think the ability to make all of those things, or overcome all of those things, and put all of those stakeholders first, all three of those, that's going to make a big game changer into the future. And as well, especially when they're niched into certain categories and criteria, I think you're going to start to see more and more of that, rather than like, hey, it's social media. It's going to be like, hey, it's entertainment and education, purely video format, like TikTok and things like that.
Yeah, nice. I have a Kim Barrett question for Kim Barrett.
Ooh.
What's a question I should have asked you but didn't? One of my favorites, that one.
Oh, whoever says that is a great question. No, I mean, like similar to your last question, like what's working now? Like, what's one thing that someone could do right now? And look, all I would say is to double down on your content ads if you're someone who has like a personal brand or positions yourself, even on a couple bucks a day across every platform. Because as I say, I think that we're going to see more and more AI-based content coming out, more like synthetic people content coming out, people pumping out content that doesn't really cut through. They're just doing content because they can do content fast and easy.
Yeah.
And I think the more that you can have that in front of your ideal audience, you're going to be positioned as like a mogul. You're going to be positioned as the best as things go forward. So a couple bucks a day on Meta, a couple bucks a day on TikTok and YouTube, and wherever else you can run video ads, probably LinkedIn and Twitter as well. I think that you will easily stand out as more, because I'm seeing so many people now pumping out content, but it's like, it's value-based, sure, but it's generic, no voice to it sort of thing. So I haven't pumped out, like I know how to automate and pump out 100 pieces of content from ChatGPT into Canva in like 2 minutes if I want to. That's not hard. But when I look at the content that's pumping out, I'm like, nah, I'm not going to post any of this, because it's not me, and it's not, it doesn't have enough touch on the way that I would like to speak about things. So I'm like, I'm going to like, I'll manually still do a little bit of my content, like pull together the ideas and stuff that I want to talk about. Then again, once I can make sure that people see that more and more, it just, again, separates me from the people that are just pumping out generic stuff, because the stuff I want to talk about is important, I think, for business owners and has a benefit to them.
Yeah. You're on the money there. It's because most people are just going to switch off if they sense it's, it's generic. It's like an ad on TV that people switch off. They don't care. They're not going to watch. But if it's you, that's something that can't be faked, or that can't be artificially generated or anything else. So that's great advice, mate. Mr. Kim Barrett, where can people find you? How can people connect with you to get more information about all the cool stuff you're doing?
Yeah, pretty much anywhere on the internet. I'm Real Kim Barrett, REAL Kim BARRETT KIM Kim Barrett. That's pretty much me anywhere. Yoursocialvoice.com.au, kimbarrett.com.au are our websites if you want to check out stuff there. But yeah, I'm on most platforms. I pretty much get back to you if you shoot me a message. So if anyone wants to jam on or touch on any of the things we've spoken about today, like, yeah, feel free, hit me up anytime.
Guys, thank you so much for joining Matt and myself. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. Of course, if you enjoyed it, please share it with someone. Get it out there to help more people. Until next time, I'm Kim. You all have been awesome. I'll see you then.